to another episode of Get Out of Rap. Today, I'm joined by Chris Mounce, who is quality and coaching specialist at Evaluagent. And I'm really looking forward to this. We've had a few chats and we're going to talk about subjects that I love and I know you guys do as well. So, Chris, thank you very much for joining me.
Hi, Martin. No, thank you for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this.
And we have been comparing setups because those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see Chris's is awesome.
Do you know, that's the thing. No, it's as we were talking about it beforehand, it becomes obsessive. Do you know, I don't know how many tutorials I've watched on YouTube about, how to light your setup, better lighting, lighting on a budget. That's always a key one because
Yeah.
you look at some of them and it's, yeah, I've got this light and it's only $400 and it's like, I don't want to pay that. Do you know, I don't want to do it. So it's always lighting setup on a budget and then I kind of go from there. But it's
It's
a
bit
journey.
Yeah, bit by bit, and it's probably relevant to what we'll talk about later on. Those kind of you just start small because it's the same as me. I started with a £12 microphone using my iPad, and that was it. And then I just started to get a little bit. Once you get sucked in, then you're like, oh, this one's only 20 £20. I'll go and get this one.
Yeah, exactly. And it starts off with things like, there's the £12 mic and the £10 mic arm. And then it's, well, I like that one, but I can't have a good mic arm without a good mic. So you need to, and it starts from there. It's insane, but it's fun, when you get those deliveries through, it's so exciting, And another thing that I like as well, and it's really nerdy, watching unboxing videos on YouTube. They are so fun, especially if you know that you're getting that little gadget. It's so exciting.
I think this would apply to your setup. Mine's a little bit more scruffy, I would say, but I like for your unboxing, I like the ones of desk setups where the cable ties are all done,
Oh yeah.
where the desk moves up and down. Those ones get me all the time. I'm just watching them over and over again, wishing for the same, some sort of Mary Poppins esque cleanup of mine.
Do you know, it's exactly the same. I mean, where you can see in the camera, it's all tidy, but see all around it, it is chaos. And it's always like that. It's one of those things. If I get something like a little gadget, I'll clear out the room, I'll clear off my desk, I'll do all the cable management things, and it feels brilliant and it looks brilliant, and I'm all happy with it. But it just goes back to the same chaos as before. I think it's just part and parcel.
Well as your lovely setup, I've been lucky enough to attend a few of your sessions, which are just so insightful and brilliant. For you, where did this journey start then within contact centers leading to Evaluagent, where you are now? You share so much. I'm really curious as to where it started with you.
Do you know, it's a really interesting question, Martin, because I thought about this and I've thought about this for a long time actually, because I think I can pinpoint almost exactly the event that kind of took me on the journey. I didn't realize it at the time. And it was I started my kind of working life in local authority. I was a benefit assessor, housing benefits and council tax benefit, fun stuff. But I was is I think I was like 19, and I was answering the phones for people calling in at this point. I was just a junior in the office, and there was no sort of kind of complicated like setup. It was literally someone would dial the number over the
Yeah.
phone would ring, you would answer it. It was super basic. And I remember, and I don't think I knew much about the job at that point. And I remember speaking to someone, and I don't remember specifically what the issue or the query was, but they were furious about something. And I had no call handling skills. I had no customer service skills. I mean, that was something that just didn't get trained at that point. It wasn't even, a consideration. And they gave it to me, both barrels, and I
Yeah.
just didn't handle it in the right way. And I don't specifically remember how I handled it, but I remember just feeling absolutely awful. I felt, like 2 inches
Mm,
tall.
mm.
Um, and he could tell that I couldn't, I didn't have a clue what I was talking about, and I wasn't handling it well. So when he get fed up shouting at me, he passed me to his wife. And this is what I refer to as the Wendy event. Her name was Wendy. So Wendy came on the phone and she just gave it again, both
It's like
barrels,
a
and
tag team.
that's literally what it was like, and it was awful, and I had no idea what to do, and so there was no hold button. It was literally, you'd press the secrecy button and it would cut off the mic. So I pressed and held the secrecy button, and I asked the people in the office for help because I was the only person on the phone, so they could hear that I was struggling, and I pressed the secrecy button, asked for help, and no one lifted their head. No one even acknowledged it. But Wendy heard the click of the secrecy button, so she knew exactly what had happened. So started, going off in one because I had pressed the mute button. And I don't remember how the call ended, but that for me, because in retrospect, what I needed there was support. I needed
Mm,
coaching. I needed that
mm,
development to help me, handle those conversations in the right way. But I was literally just left to deal with it myself, and I didn't deal with it well at all. It was a terrible customer experience, and it stuck with me for a long, long time. Probably still now, actually. And I
mm.
really think I attribute that event, the Wendy event, to how we eventually came into coaching and development and training, because that's where the passion lies. But it's, yeah, a significant. I mean, it must have been like a 3-minute phone call, 4 minutes, but very significant, I think, in shaping me and where I ended up.
I'm nodding away, and I'm sure people listening that have been on the phones um, have their own versions of the Wendy event where you just suddenly feel like you've lost control and you are just against the ropes, taking shot after shot after shot, hanging in there, just wanting wanting it to end. Um, and you're
It
dead
feels like a
right.
personal attack, doesn't it? Because you've lost control, you feel really vulnerable and open.
Mm. There's definitely, I think even now, I read something not so long ago about, I can remember being told as part of my training, it's not about you. They're not aiming it at you personally. So you have to disassociate yourself. I don't think they used that word, but that's basically what they were saying. What I read recently was within, I think it was an American publication, Psychology Today. I might have that wrong, but it's a good publication and I read it often, so it might be that. That said, actually, that is also harmful over time because you go to work and you invest yourself, and we're encouraged to bring our personalities to bear. You know, it's not, personalization of the customer experience isn't just about the customer, it's about us representing the brand or the service or the organization that we're working for. And you can only, yes, you can follow the process and be aligned with everyone else, but you're still bringing yourself to that connection with somebody, right?
Yeah.
And disassociating yourself and going, oh, it's not aimed at me, it still has to go somewhere. It's still, that had an impact on you when you were telling that story. I'm thinking of the time we used to call them screamers, and it was where, as you said, other people around you would look and go, ooh,
Thank God that's
Martin's
not me.
Martin's got one. Martin's got one. Now some of the people I sat alongside, we found it funny. It'd be like, oh, and it was humor. It was humor that was used. But I think that kind of call handling is just the entry door into a lot of coaching and feedback that can be applied both in the moment, how to deal with complaints, how to deal with angry customers, how to deal with conflict. But then you have everything else after that, which is what do you do with that from a psychological point of view, and how do you, because there will be people working in contact centers right now where those calls might be quite common. If you think about utilities, there's a lot going on in society, and that is reflected in the calls that people
Yeah.
take and how customers are showing up. We're probably quicker to be frustrated uh, during these times than we have in the past. So, I mean, from there, then it's strange that you stayed in the industry, or did you?
Well, actually,
What did you do?
well, I kind of went sideways at that point because It seems like another wacky story to be honest, but this is all true. So whilst I was still in that junior post, a there was a team that worked off-site, and I'd only ever heard of these guys through sort of kind of reputation. And they come in one day, and it was this kind of older guy, and he was wearing like a trench coat, and it was like life on Mars. And he was in, and he was looking for files, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I'll get whatever you need. This is super important." And I remember asking, "Who's this guy?" You know, I expected the old Cortina to be sitting out in the car park, and
Yeah.
he said, "Oh, that's John from Fraud." And I was like, fraud? What do you mean fraud? So then I discovered there was a whole fraud investigation team being, in housing benefits and welfare benefits. There's obviously that element of, fraudulent claims. It's costing, the
Mm.
government millions and millions. But I thought to myself, that sounds like a really, really cool job. That's what I want to do. So eventually, I done my time as an assessor and studied benefits law and council tax law, and eventually moved into fraud investigation. So it
Did you
was a
get a
total
trench coat?
sidestep. I never got a trench coat. Well, this is the thing.
Oh.
I mean, I don't even remember if he actually wore a trench coat. I think I just romanticized it, in
Yeah.
my head where it was like I was thinking it'll be so cool. There'll be, like serious interviews and high pressure and surveillance and all of that sort of thing. And yes, part of your training, you were trained in investigative interviewing and surveillance techniques, which was all very cool. But the reality, it wasn't. It was completely different, and it wasn't for me. So that was when I came back to customer service, and that's when I started my life as an agent. Actually, in a proper
Mm.
contact center with the proper tech, and I really learned and harnessed all of those contact center skills. But then one of the things that I thrived on was getting that feedback and that coaching, because I realized these are skills that are not only learnable, but they're transferable. Your call handling skills, how to handle confrontation, empathy.
Mm.
Empathy is one of the most important skills that not only an agent needs, but people need.
Mm.
And it's the same skill you can use outside of work. So when I realized all of that, it was like, wow, this is such a fascinating world that we're in. And coaching, training, that was my niche. So that's where I moved into. Moved into a senior position within the coaching team, and we were looking for a new quality assurance platform, because we were doing all of this in spreadsheets, and that comes with, as we know, it comes with a whole load of challenges. And it just so happened that the platform that we were bringing in was Evaluagent. And at that point, I fell in love with the whole platform. And when the opportunity came up to move into Evaluagent, well, the rest is history. And we kind of joke about it in the team, where I'm like an Evaluagent fanboy. But the thing is, it's true. I've lived and breathed the platform, and I see the benefits it brought us, and been able to see it benefiting so many others. It's such a cool thing, because at its heart, at my own heart, it's about developing, training, and getting the best out of people. So that's my
What?
journey.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And there's nothing wrong with being a fanboy.
All
It's
right.
nothing wrong with that at all. It makes your job part of your life and a pleasurable part, doesn't it? There's a couple of things there that really I wanted to just reference in what you said. I love what you said about our industry's transferable skills, because I think we don't talk enough about that. We don't talk enough about widening. Let's say we're talking to our team of agents about, to your point, empathy, right? We say, look, we're going to do some empathy training, or we're going to incorporate empathy as a line item in our coaching templates, or whatever it may be. But when we're introducing it, I think, we it would behoove us to widen the communication. So when we're talking to people about why we're doing it, we're saying, oh, it's going to make this is something we think will be good for our customers. I think we need to remind ourselves to let our teams know it's good for them, and it's good for them in their
Yeah.
relationships, in their life. Because I will sometimes have to remind myself, but I will definitely a lot of the time lean on training that I've had and experience that I've had within our industry when communicating around my life. Yeah. friends, family. Um, Today was sorting out my car. How I communicate isn't just a natural thing. It's based on the coaching, the feedback, and the training that I've had in my career to benefit me, definitely. And I think if we can start, if we should talk to people about that and say, this isn't boring, this isn't just about the job. You seize this opportunity and
Mm.
apply it in your life, and everything, and your life will be better. You will be a better communicator. People will want to talk to you. You'll be better at listening. You'll retain more information. You'll get more things done. So much of that I've learned through being in contact centers. So I love what you said there about kind of that empathy and coaching, and you being drawn to coaching as a skill set, and that kind of seeing that then be realized through Evaluagent. You must have been like, right, how do I work with these guys?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, the coaching is, and it's interesting because you've spoken about this in the past as well, Martin, where someone's promoted to a team leader, and they almost, it's like I don't remember the exact phrase you used, but it's like they become a team leader over the weekend.
Oh, the magic
And that's
weekend.
the magic weekend. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of kind of thing when it comes to being a coach as well, where there's almost that expectation, I think, where you know how to evaluate calls, you know how to give feedback, you know how to coach. And what I found is that was a journey as well. I think it's still an ongoing journey because I'm always looking to master my craft when it comes to coaching. And I think there's always, new techniques. There's always, and it comes down to that genuine human interaction. I think if you can make that connection with someone very quick, then that's an excellent skill to have. And part of that for me to develop that, because when I do something, I want to do that in the best way that I can. It's to a fault sometimes where it becomes obsessive. Um, but as part of that kind of coaching journey, I thought to myself, what can I do in order to really unlock these skills so that I can pass on these skills and these coaching techniques to others. So when I'm having a coaching conversation, people are getting something out of it. Because I've been in coaching conversations myself where um, I was being coached and I just get nothing from it. And it comes back to that, it becomes a tick box exercise. You dread it because it's pointless. And that's, it shouldn't be like that at all. So I volunteered for a good couple of years with Samaritans. It's a charity. Do you know
Mm,
Samaritans? It's a
yeah.
charity that supports people when they're
Yeah.
going through difficult times. So I was a listening volunteer and a trainer in Samaritans for a good couple of years. And that was really where I understood what true empathy was, where it's not about, and this is a key thing, it's a differentiation between empathy and sympathy. Where if you're sympathizing with someone, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, I'm sorry you're going through that, it can come across as patronizing.
Mm.
And that can, and if you're handling a call, you can lose the call because if someone feels patronized, that's going to cause all sorts of challenges. But it's not about going through or experiencing what they're experiencing. It's about looking to understand it. I can see how that would affect you in the way that it has. So there's two clear differentiations between empathy and sympathy. And I think sometimes it's easy to get those mixed up, but it's such a powerful thing, to make those true, genuine human connections. And that's coaching for me.
I love that. And good on you. A good, very good friend of mine was telling me about the Samaritans training that he went through, the whole process. And I'd already been an advocate of talking to especially team leaders, and I do it now in the community around, you know what, some of your team, and we'll feel like this ourselves when we're dealing with problems and challenges. You should get people to be comfortable with you asking the questions. You want comfort or solutions. So
Yeah.
do you, because I think I've been guilty in the past, and I still have a tendency to want to fix things. So for my children, for my whatever, I want to fix things. Whereas for them, sometimes me suddenly saying, do this, I can do that, I can do this, isn't the right thing at that moment. What they just want to do is unburden, and they want comfort, and they want that empathy. And what I found fascinating talking to my friend John about the Samaritans. And I think there's a lot of their, it'll be interesting to get your view because I think there's a lot of their methodology we can apply in our industry. Um,
Mm.
but he said one of the challenges he found was you go into your shift knowing that you cannot offer solutions, that you can help point people to the solution, but someone's contacting, your inclination is to sort out the issue, but you can't. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you because ultimately a volunteer is not a counsellor. They're
Mm,
It's a listing volunteers, so they're there to listen.
yeah.
And one of the ways I kind of reconciled that is there could be a problem that someone's facing that I have no clue how to fix. And I think certainly in the beginning, it would put a lot of pressure on me where you're looking to find solutions to a problem that you've no idea, you've never experienced it. So trying to offer solutions would be futile. So when you then come across a problem that you can fix, if you just apply that same methodology where, well, I'm looking at this problem from my perspective, their perspective is completely different. So me
Mm,
even offering solutions to a problem that I do know, is still not going to be helpful. So you're there providing a listening ear. And through that, I mean, listening as you'll know, it's not just about kind of opening your ears. There's a whole load of, like reflection, clarifying things that they're saying, empathizing, silence as well, just giving people the space to be able to talk about what they want to talk about. And one of the things that is once someone's training was finished, I would always tell them this little story, and this was the way that I'd thought about it, where you come into your shift and there is someone somewhere in the UK that you don't know, you've never met before, and you'll never likely meet them. But as you come into your shift, you are coming up to the point where they're going to pick up the phone to phone Samaritans, and it's going to be you at the other end of the line. And that's when your lives essentially interconnect for a very brief amount of time. But the difference that you can make to that
mm,
person is
mm,
completely, you cannot describe that. So then
mm,
at this point, when the phone goes down, we just go on with lives again. But that point there is so significant. And that's the power, I think, of being able to listen and provide that emotional support. You've not solved the problems, but you've made a key difference. But
mm,
the challenge is sometimes you would never know the difference that it has made someone. So it was just one of those things where sometimes you'd be able to understand, other times you would just need to trust that you've done the best that you could in that moment. And I think that same methodology can apply to coaching conversations.
mm,
Certainly that's what I done. Every
mm.
conversation that I had following that, and I still use it to this day, much to my partner's annoyance. She's totally immune to those skills, but I'm working on it.
Your Jedi mind tricks don't work on me.
It's exactly, if I try and give her a bit of empathy, it's like, don't give me your empathy lines, Chris. I'm not. It doesn't work for me. And it's like, well, I can understand how you feel like that.
I love that. I love that little story as well because it's that um, even away from the Samaritans, just in our industry, trying to personalize, reminding our teams that try and visualize where this call into us is in that customer's day and how would you like that to go. So the other day my internet went down. It's a pain. I've got loads of things to do in the day, some work, some life administration, some picking up the kids, whatever. And then I'm going to have to make a call to my internet provider. I would hope that there were teams the other end going, these people that are contacting us on the fault line, where are they at in their day? How is this obviously hasn't helped. What do they want? How best can we handle it? How do we want them going away from the call? And just kind of bring in that personalized, that the empathy point, bring in the
Yeah,
person into our thoughts rather than it just being how many calls have you handled today? What's our how many what do we get? What are the outcomes? How many tickets did you raise? For their point of views, how many engineers have gone out? Behind all of those numbers is someone where I love that, to your point, they've connected. How are they then going away? Are they going away satisfied, and you know what, great, there's a solution now. And they handled it really well. It was a pleasant experience when I came into that connection, frustrated, annoyed, whatever it may be. I wasn't at Wendy levels. Now, let's go to the point where you started your first dip in the QA water. So naturally, you loved coaching, you're really enjoying that, and then you went into the world of QA. What was it like when you first went in? What was the kind of setup? Was it, the scorecard that says, has something happened, yes or no? Let us know where we're at.
It was spreadsheets, and it was really just, and I think it's a challenge that a lot of contact centers still face today, where you've got your scorecard on a spreadsheet, and it was literally just, did this happen, did that happen, and you would fill out, pen and paper, you would fill out the score, give some feedback, and that was it. That was essentially it. Once and it seems completely archaic now. Um, Once that evaluation was done and that feedback was given through that coaching session, the paper spreadsheet that was printed off would be put in a file and then put away in a drawer, never really to be looked at again. The
Yeah.
only thing that was then input into a bigger spreadsheet was the quality score. So you could have a look at everyone's quality scores, but in terms of looking at what was their strengths, what was the areas where they needed to develop, what was the feedback, there was no visibility of that at all. You were really just coaching on the basis of what that current piece of paper was telling you. And it's very limited in terms of, what insight are you getting from that? And this was the other challenge as well, where um, our quota, I think at that time was five evaluations per agent per month. So you would have your team of agents and you had to go through and evaluate those conversations. And that was quite a lot because you had other things that you were working on as well. So where you were kind of up against it, you were really kind of rushing through the
Mm,
evaluations, which would then impact the quality
mm,
of the evaluation and the quality of the feedback, which would then impact the coaching conversation you had because you were rushing through it. There was no real insight that you were getting. And if those were five conversations that didn't really contain a lot of insight, what were you going to talk about in your coaching session? So it
mm.
became that tick box exercise where, oh yeah, you scored 100% in your conversations. You scored 60%, or you failed that one. That was a 0% because you didn't confirm DPA. That was the types of conversations, and what are you getting out of that? Nothing. No one wants to be told, oh, your quality score was 0% because you didn't confirm a date of birth. Now, these data protection, of course, is really, really important, but that conversation could have been handled brilliantly, in other aspects of that. And whilst those compliance failures need to be pointed out, why not still celebrate those elements that went really, really well? Because it's not about, for me, it's not about um, highlighting the errors for highlighting sake. It's about giving that bigger picture. And coming back to the being able to identify those trends, if you're able to pick out things that you can talk about and identify those patterns, focus in that as well. So when you're coaching that and improving that, that's gonna increase the performance overall. It'll boost the agent's morale. Everything will be much more happy in terms of the conversations you're having.
I think as well, if you take out the word paper, there's still so many, um, still such a high percentage of people undertaking QA in that fashion. So I know from my own time as both team leader and contact center manager, it was very much like that. And I have to admit, a couple of months, it might have been because of a project or an end of quarter, or I'd do them all in a day, which was insane. Because
Martin, was it the last day of the month when you
yeah,
were due?
yeah. Um, and you just hope that the quality score was, I mean, we can get into scoring as well in a sec, because I think scoring masks so much and points us a lot of the time in the wrong direction. The other thing that I found as well, like you, originally in spreadsheets, but I still think um, in a lot of other areas, the percentages are really high of our industry that is still in spreadsheets for QA. I mean,
Do you know, I saw a stat and it was around 60%
yeah,
across the globe,
mm,
which is massive.
mm,
It's 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 a surprise, and I think because of the business that I'm in and what we do at Evaluagent, when I see the art of the possible, it's kind of like, why, why punish yourself
yeah.
by doing it in this way? It can be so much better, so much more fulfilling, bring so much more, many more benefits to the business as opposed to approaching it in this way. It's always amazes me.
I think unless people have like something like your kit, they are in the process of, and again, because I've lived this and I've known, it was only when you would have a moment to think, I'm sure my team member missed these areas last month and we did feedback. Let me go and check. And to your point, go back and check. And then the question is about, okay, is it your feedback? You haven't done any investigation. Let's take the DPA example. So I had some new starts and they failed. And I did that thing like you've just said. So we only focused on scores. I went back and looked at previous feedback that I'd done, and that same area had been missed. Now, that's on me, right? Because what I didn't do was say to my team member, right, just talk me through. Let's talk me through how you undertake the call. And we had a pretty basic system that there certainly wasn't support given on screen to the agent. It was just kind of they'd been trained with the process. They were filling out the customer's data boxes, if you like, whilst also remembering certain points that they had to say at certain times. Uh, and I didn't ask questions about how do you remind yourself what way have you got to prompt you to make sure that you do complete this section
Yeah.
before moving on. I hadn't done any of that. I'd just gone, DPA miss. So, oh, that's a big impact. So, can you sort that out? Yes. Great. Thanks. That's my coaching
That's a
done.
job done, isn't
Yeah.
it? Do you know,
And then you
it's
thought, go on.
I know it's interesting because I remember having that same sort of kind of scenario where you see it before and it might have been DPA, but it was like, right, you've missed that before. That's quite serious. Can you remember next time? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll remember. And you're like, right, brilliant. And you've literally ticked that box. And I think there is a time as well where I thought, well, what else am I supposed to do?
Mm,
In order to sort of kind of tackle that. What else can I do other than say you need to do this? And that was part of that, I guess, coaching development where it's about putting it back on the coachee, isn't it? What are you going to do in order for this to in order for us to kind of resolve this? And the number of times that people felt that just having a post-it sticking on their monitor to remind them, and that just they came to their own conclusion with that. So the amount of people that had that little post-it stuck on their screen to say remember date of birth, and it takes me back.
now that kind of quantum leap then that you had when you first saw um, Evaluagent, what were the things that kind of excited you the most? And given that was some time ago, where are you guys now in terms of your involvement? What are the things that you're working on that are really exciting you? But to start with, what are the things that led to the quantum leap? What became possible by getting the kit?
I remember it vividly. So when I saw Evaluagent for the first time, and we saw the scorecard. It was that visual impact from moving from a boring spreadsheet that was just, the spreadsheet wasn't even kind of color coded and things. It was literally just a grid. Seeing the UI where it was, really crisp. It was a case of, you could provide feedback on individual line items. You could, you know, set up really colorful scoring templates, customizable scoring templates. The scorecard was beautiful. It still is. It still is. But the really cool thing was being able to score those conversations really quick. So there was no sort of kind of filling out the paper or filling out the spreadsheet. all of that data was getting fed into a whole series of reports. So whereas before I was needing to look through a paper file or find spreadsheets to manually look for those trends, I could see them instantly. So those
Mm.
coaching conversations become much more easier to prep for because I could see right away, okay, here's a I'm looking at Chris's performance over the last 3 months. Every evaluation is showing that he's got an issue with confirming the date of birth or empathy. He's not showing empathy. I could see that right away. And I could see all of the coaching records that's attached to that particular insight. That was the thing for me, being able to see that all of that in the one place and really, real time. That was the defining moment. And that's where I was like, this is amazing. It doesn't need to be as difficult as what it's been. We can focus in the conversations because you can easily see things that you need to talk about.
And then when you started with them, you must have been like a kid in a sweet shop, just kind of, this is
Yeah.
great.
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, there was features there that we didn't have, and when I saw them, it was like this is amazing. And as a super user, it was like I can use all of these things and I can play with all of these new toys. And we were speaking about gadgets earlier. That was like gadget heaven when you see all of the cool stuff. But it's we've moved on so far, and that's the cool thing where it's constant. Kind of evolvement. We go through a journey as well, just to think like what we were talking about with coaching, where we'll develop something, we'll iterate, test it, iterate it, make it better. We'll learn from things that we could have done differently, from things that are working well, and just constantly make things better and better. Because when we look at, think about the challenges that we've had when it comes to QA, finding those conversations to
Mm.
evaluate, where it was just a random selection. And it was again, if you were going back to the where we were talking about doing your evaluations in the last day of the month, if you had a conversation that was 10 minutes and a conversation that was 3 minutes, what one are you kind of going to take?
Yeah,
So you're picking these random calls. Well, random calls, there's
yeah,
obviously selection bias there. Um, and all of that time that's spent looking for those conversations, you evaluate it, and there's not a lot of insight in it. So it's a waste of time. So but then being able to evaluate those conversations quickly because you don't want to be wasting all of your time evaluating a conversation, especially if you've got a scorecard that contains a lot of questions. All of that takes time to be able to score that and give feedback and things. But then thinking about it from the team leader point of view, where you are looking to identify trends that you want to talk about with your team to coach and develop them, you need to be able to identify those quickly. But then all of that it's kind of futile if you don't have your agents engaged in the process. So we've looked at all of those challenges and we've essentially built our platform around those four challenges. And it's blown my mind, frankly, where you're able to identify the conversations that you must monitor because it evaluates every conversation or it analyzes every conversation rather so you can understand what's contained in those conversations, what was spoken about, what was the sentiment, was there any overtalk, was there any silences that would maybe suggest that the agent was struggling to answer a question. All of those things can be picked out of a conversation and put in front of an evaluator to evaluate, but it can be automated in the sense where if there's things that can be evaluated within the conversation, the platform can do that for you. So as the evaluator, you essentially approve it. And we do that through, logic-based AI and generative AI, but it's not about replacing the evaluator. It's about working as a co-pilot. So I get all
mm,
of these insights, why is the platform scored the way that it has? It will suggest improvement actions that the agent could take. But as the evaluator, it's up to me to decide how much of that insight I use. Because ultimately the buck stops with me as the evaluator.
yeah.
If I give a wrong evaluation, the platform or the system won't get the blame. It will be me because I make the decision. But that passes through and we can identify those trends very easily. And the cool thing I love is the agent engagement aspect where it's gamified. So if you're passing evaluations, you get points. If you're being awarded badges, you get points. If you're engaging with your performance data, you get points. And of course, points mean prizes. So you can then bid eBay style on auctions So you could have, say, maybe like we used to have it as well, where it was like, yeah, we're doing a competition this week. The person with the lowest average handling time gets a £20 voucher. So everyone for that week was squirreling away, and customer experience didn't come into it. It was getting that average handling time down. But with this approach, it's the long game. You can build in a really cool auction prize in a month's time, and it's the long game. People can save up those points, bid on them, creates that friendly competition. It's that all-in-one approach to really tackle those four core challenges that we all know exists when it comes to quality and engagement.
And if you can just repeat the four challenges.
Essentially, the first one is bridging that insight gap. So it's identifying those conversations that are analysing 100% of the conversations to understand what's going on with them. And through bridging that insight gap, we can solve what we refer to as the QA quandary, identifying the must monitor conversations. So it will pull from those insights, you can pull out the conversations that you want to get in front of your team, and that then feeds through into that third challenge, which is the improvement issue, identifying what needs to be spoken about in coaching through quickly identifying trends. And then it's solving the engagement issue through bringing your agents into the fold and really helping them buy into the QA process. It's
And
not Big Brother, that's the thing.
I love it. I'm right behind this as well because it instantly across those areas puts QA where it should be. It used to really, really frustrate me that kind of QA is this underutilized superpower or fuel injection for your contact
Yeah.
center. And too often it's just like a forgotten part of the business that unless you just want to check in and see, is everything we're doing okay? Well, yes. It's so underutilized in so many areas. And yet, through the utilization of your kit, covering those four areas, you've got engaged workforce. The QA team have got more time to focus on some really cool stuff. You've got better coaching and better feedback, all of which wraps up to being able to deliver real improvements, both at a granular and strategic level. Then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, you've got the leadership team who may have overlooked QA suddenly going, oh, okay, this is now starting to really push us into where we want to be through employee engagement, through customer satisfaction kind of results, ultimately better ROI and revenue, all of these things just wrapped up, kind of unlocked through your kit. I'm right behind it because it's always been a frustration of mine that we don't give QA the kudos that it deserves.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I remember back in the day where it used to be referred to as auditing. So rather than getting an evaluation, you were audited, and
Mm,
that's going to strike fear into anyone. I remember those emails dropping in, that you've failed an audit check, and I was like, oh, geez, these guys are the worst. But it's the whole point of it was improvement and making people better, making the business better, and I think one of the key things is there's so much data that you can get from a QA program, that you can get from Evaluagent, but it's not just data is useless if you can't do anything with it. But what
mm,
we do is we give you all of that data, but we also let you do things with it. And it's all of that. It's that seamless workflow from right at the beginning where all of those conversations are analyzed to your agents being engaged with the whole process, and looking to improve. Because
mm,
ultimately, and I firmly believe this, it starts with the agent. Agents are heroes, and if they're happy, if they're performing well, it's a better customer experience. And if it's a better customer experience, it's a better business. So it's a
mm,
win-win, but it starts with the
mm,
agent, I think, for me. Obviously it feeds through to team leaders, they play a massive part. But it's that whole support piece and enabling people and empowering people to improve and develop, which then comes back to that whole thing. I think we go full circle where that's what I needed. When I was getting shouted at from Wendy, that was what I needed.
mm. I love it. And it's funny you say about audit. Um, the terminology around QA hopefully a lot of this now is back in the day.
Mm,
I was a team manager, and the whole contact center floor, everyone was in the contact center. There was no remote work, but everyone's on the contact center floor, and QA were on the floor below. And the relationship between ops and QA was very much we were service and sales, so these guys could determine whether we got bonuses or not. So they had power, but we it was kind of arbitrary. Have you done something? Yes or no. You never really, and I think you viewed QA through that lens. You didn't view QA through the coaching lens. You viewed it through, have we done okay, or are they going to be punitive, right? And that audit was the word that was used. But the reason I'm saying this is one of the things they did, which did not help. I can't believe this actually took place, but the QA manager at the time thought it would be a good idea. That they were paper based. It was paper based output, and the QA team would come up to the floor and want to come over to the team manager with your feedback for your team, and they'd hand it over and talk through it. They decided to color code the feedback forms. So if you saw someone from QA walking over to you and they had a handful of red
oh, I wasn't
paper,
red. No way.
uh, the whole floor would be looking like this. Now, and I spoke to the QA team because I'd fostered a good relationship with them. I spoke to them and they said, we hate this because we're walking on the floor. If I've got a couple, and this girl said, if I've got a couple of greens, I put them over the top of the reds because I know you're all looking at me. And you could
Yeah.
see people with a pile of red feedback forms, knowing that they're obviously fails, and and I'll be thinking, go to Rachel's team, go to Rachel's team, and see them come over to me, and you just think that is not the way it should be done. That is not what. Now, of course, in a regulatory environment, there are things that are in place to protect customers that have to be done, and that's totally understandable. But this kind of losing losing the stereotype of QA being somehow preventative to business, preventative to
Yeah.
growth. That's where we're at. That's where we should be at.
I think there's a lot of psychology when it comes to QA as well, which I think we're harnessing now. That's and a perfect example using the red for for those poor outcomes and things. I mean, there's all of this sort of kind of talk around color theory. Where red, right away it signifies danger, warning. We know
Mm,
red is a bad thing. So if I'm seeing red, instinctively it's going to put me on high alert, and
mm,
that's not a good position to be in. So it's
mm.
about thinking about how we present ourselves as part of the kind of the QA piece, rather than using red. Think about those other, there's plenty of other colours that you can use in order to sort of kind of take away that feeling. But then it's balancing it, isn't it? Where as a manager, I want to be able to see very quickly what's going well and what's maybe not going well. So the kind of traditional red, amber, green has maybe got a place in that respect.
Yeah.
But I think we always need to think about the impact it has on the person. And it's a great example, walking through the floor with those with the red files.
Now let's bring this up to date then. What is going on with you guys that you're involved in that excites you at the moment?
Oh, it's definitely it's the value agent CX. The way that we are solving those four key challenges. I mean, it's revolutionary, I believe, the way that it brings everything together, because the way that you're able to, from all of your conversations that are happening in your contact center, and I'm not just talking phone calls, it's everything, every channel, you can know very quickly what's happening in those conversations. So was there empathy demonstrated? Was the customer sentiment positive? Was it negative? All of those insights, and this is the really exciting thing for me, the level of insight you can get in a conversation allows you to find the conversations you need to focus on. And whether that's the really, for want of a better term, the awful ones. And we've all heard those calls before where you've got your head in your hands when you listen to them, but it's also about celebrating the successes as well. And I think one of the challenges, I think, when it comes to training, you're taking agents through induction training. it's really difficult to find examples
Mm,
of excellent conversations. Going back to that random call selection, if at the very least you're getting a conversation that contains no insight, you can't use those for training. I mean, they're not good examples of here's the great work that we do. Here's an example of how you handle a conversation. But as well as being able to identify the high risk conversations, it's about identifying the excellent conversations, and the automated scoring that comes over the top of that, being able to automatically pull out those high risk and automatically score it through a blended approach. I mean, the way that it works is you've got logic based AI where it'll look for combination of words and phrases, which, if they're said at the right time in the right order, it will suggest something happens. So that insight is tagged onto the conversation. But then you've got the generative, the AI based sort of kind of insights where if something's suggested based on how you configure this particular topic, it will tag that onto the conversation. So it's it's not difficult anymore to use AI in QA, I think is the key thing. Because I think
mm,
AI has been a journey in itself and it's just
mm.
exploded in the last year and a bit. But it's not about AI anymore. It's about how you can use it in the way that it work for the business. And it's becoming easier and easier to do that through the work that we've done. And that's what's exciting for me. Being able to see, going back to the old days where it was spreadsheets, all manual, the way that that's all automated and it makes your work, much more efficient. Because I know there's always that challenge where you worry that, well, if I don't need to spend as much time on QA, well, I'm going to have nothing else to do. My job is at risk. I don't think anyone's ever been in a situation where they're thinking, I've done all of my evaluations, I've got absolutely nothing else to do. I don't think we've been in that situation. So it frees up all of that time to focus on those other things. And for me, being able to get those insights and evaluations done easily, it means I can have much more efficient and effective coaching conversations. I can be with my team as opposed to ticking boxes. And that's the key thing for me. I think it's really exciting.
It sounds great. And I love the phrase that you used earlier that I think is perfectly suited to what you guys have got going on, and that's co-pilot. So this
Oh yeah.
is this is your co-pilot, right?
Well, that's a QA co-pilot. It's there to work with you and support you. It's not the other way around. And what I love about it, and this is another approach actually, where you're given key insights in the conversation. The platform scores the line items and it'll give reasons as to why it's scored it the way that it has. And it'll also give insight suggestions for essentially how the agent can improve. And it's up to me to decide what I pass through to the agent as feedback. But one of the challenges I think that we have in our industry is being able to give feedback in an effective way. And that can essentially train me in
Mm.
how to deliver feedback in a what's the word, in an objective way, because the platform's essentially giving it to me and I can learn from that insight that's given. I can then filter that through to the agent. So it's subconsciously training my brain to give feedback in a more effective way. So it's two pronged, I think, in that approach.
Now, hearing you talk about it, I'm sure there's plenty of people listening that want to get to see it. How do they do that?
Oh, get in touch with us. So I'm on LinkedIn as well, and also through evaluagent.com. And we would love to show the platform on the website as well. There is product tours where you can have a look and you can see it in action. But it is very, very cool. When I saw this coming out and how we were developing this, it was one of those things where you get proper excited about it. And I'm fanboying now at this point, but it is very, very cool. The power that it has, even when it changed our QA program back in the day, we've came so much further since then. So it's an astounding piece of kit.
Well, look, Chris, I know we're going to talk again on a range of topics because we both know, don't we? And you're an expert in this that QA touches a lot of what we do in the contact center world. So I'm really looking forward to having more chats with you. This has been insightful. And like you said, if anyone wants to see what Chris has been describing, just get in touch with him and prepare to be amazed. Thank you
Oh
so much
yeah.
for coming on, mate.
No, thanks, Martin. That's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed this.
We'll have to do an unboxing one soon as well.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I'll let you know the next piece of kit I get, and you do the same. We'll do it together.
Thank you, mate.